What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all doing fantastic today on this very fine day. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about, turn down the gain on my microphone real quick. Today we're going to be discussing the top 5 things I want to see in the Zendikar Rising set. So, as you all probably know, Zendikar Rising is the new Magic set that's coming out in the fall. I think it's like September 20-something, something like that. We should be getting spoilers soon. I'm really pumped for it. It's going to be really cool. We're going back to Zendikar, one of my favorite planes of all time. One of those classic cool planes. So let me just tell you guys a little bit about what it is that I'm hoping for, looking for, wishing for in this new set. As many of you know, we already have the spoils for the Nahiri and the Jace, those new planeswalkers. They're looking pretty cool. I like what they're doing with the Jace planeswalker, giving it kicker. Nahiri has some warrior and equipment synergy. Hopefully that'll be pretty interesting. So let's jump into the first thing. Now, the first thing that I'm looking for in this new Zendikar Rising set... Hi, Nike. It's my cat. Nike!
Say hello. Say hello to the people.
First thing we'd like to see is the opposite of a landfall effect. Here you go, Nike. You can go down now. What I mean by this is an effect that triggers whenever a land not enters the battlefield, like with landfall, but enters the graveyard from the battlefield. And you could call it something, like landfill, which I think would be pretty groovy. To be, if I'm allowed to be cheeky here, but this sort of effect would be pretty interesting because there was a little bit of speculation about the new Zendikar set and the idea that in the wake of the Eldrazi, and since we're not getting the Eldrazi, Wizards already confirmed this, that we're not going to see, Emrakul, Ulamog, or Kozilek in this set, but with the Eldrazi withdrawn from the plane, there has to be some sort of conflict there, and maybe there's some sort of lasting repercussion that was caused, which has maybe led to some sort of darkness, some sort of evil force, or just general havoc and chaos spreading throughout the plane. And so what was traditionally the landfall mechanic, which benefited you for playing lands, which is what Zendikar's all about, maybe it now has to do with land destruction. And when a land enters the graveyard from your battlefield, then you get some sort of trigger. So for example, if we took a card like Rampaging Baloths, it's a 6-mana 6/6, I believe, and then it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 4/4 green beast creature token. So the landfill version of this card could be a, let's say, 5 mana, like 3 a black and a green, or maybe 4 mana, 2 a black and a green, for a, like 4/4 death touch, and then landfill. Whenever a land enters the graveyard from the battlefield, you get a 2/2 beast creature, like beast horror creature token with death touch. Now, the reason why I'm saying death touch is because when we're looking at through Magic history, when things get corrupted, sort of like Garrick, the black one, the Garrick the Cursed, whatever it is, I don't know. There's one that transforms, and Garrick goes from making these 3/3 beasts, or these 2/2 wolves, and making these black 1/1 wolves with death touch. So what's interesting about this is that if that same sort of corruption, obviously not the same because Garrick was affected by the Chain Veil and by Liliana, and Zendikar would be affected by the Eldrazi in their wakes, it would have this sort of corrupting effect where you get these like 2/2 warped horror beast tokens, which I think would be pretty cool. These just warped versions of other creatures due to this landfill effect. That would be really cool, I think, to see. It'd be a new, different kinds of mechanic that they can use in one that's pretty powerful. I mean, landfall, rather, and, anything having to do with lands is usually pretty powerful in most formats because there's not a lot of interaction. You have, of course, the Ponza decks, which destroy lands. You got things like Blood Moon. You got, like, in Legacy and Vintage, Wasteland, Strip Mine, things like that. And so there is a bit, but not in Standard, That's why Field of the Dead was so good, because all we had is... what's it called? I'm going to put the card up here because I forget what it's called, but it's Field of Ruin. There we go. Okay, Field of Ruin. We had that card, and that's a little bit of land interaction. but there's not a lot that really like messes with lands or stifles those sorts of triggers, things like that. So having a landfill ability could be pretty good, but also not too busted because we're having Growth Spiral rotate out of the format. Thank the Lord. So this landfill idea then moves to the next point, which I'll talk about. The next thing I want to see is a Golgari Nissa Planeswalker. So in all but one case, through the course of all of Magic, we have had Nissa as a mono-green Planeswalker, and she's an interesting sort of character. I'm not sure if you guys are really up to date on the Magic lore, but Nissa's character is one of a sort of like passive, sort of very shy sort of character, and she's quite the pacifist. And I think there was in the Amonkhet story, like the official story that they had written for the Wizards website, like she was sparring with Gideon and didn't really know how, and they had actually like trained her to fight because she didn't really know what she was doing, but she's really powerful. And what we saw in Amonkhet was her take on the color of green. Take on the color of green? What the heck? Take on the color of blue. She became Simic. It was Nissa, Steward of Elements. I'll put that up right here. And she became a blue-green Planeswalker. Super cool. Also one of the first Planeswalkers ever to have an Excellence mana cost. Really interesting. Now what they could do with Zendikar, if, let's say, Zendikar is facing some sort of corruption due to the Eldrazi's impact when they were set free, maybe we get a Golgari Nissa. That would be pretty cool. And it has something to do with this landfill effect. And maybe it functions a bit like the Gitrog monster in terms of getting you value, maybe sacrifices your lands. But it'd be cool to see Nissa go from this very like innocent, pacifist kind of character through all of the events of the storyline, War of the Spark, all of that coming around, to now where she visits her home planet, sees that it's fallen into chaos, and is now a bit more jaded, a bit more cynical about the world, and that changes her character in the color pie that she fits in. That would be pretty interesting to see. That's number 2. Next, we have the resurgence of the Trifecta. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the OG Zendikar, it was Nahiri, Ugin, and Sorin who got together to trap the Eldrazi originally in the Hedrons. Now, the Eldrazi escaped. Nahiri went for Sorin's help. Sorin said, no, deal this on your own, and that's why they have a feud. So, I want them to bring back the Trifecta. I want an Ugin Planeswalker, a Sorin Planeswalker, and a Nahiri Planeswalker. So we already have the Nahiri Planeswalker, and now, unfortunately, there's usually like 4 or 5 Planeswalkers a set. So, if I get what I want in the Nissa Planeswalker, I'm not going to be able to get Sorin or Ugin, but I would like to see them bring the Trifecta back together on Zendikar and sort out their differences so that either Nahiri and Sorin can be friends again, or one of them can maybe get because there was a fight on in War of the Spark, and maybe one of them can fight it out. I'm not sure. I don't think Sorin died in War of the Spark. I know that they had a fight, but I don't think Sorin died. I'm not entirely sure, though. It could have been a stalemate. I hope so, because I love Sorin. And more specifically, in this point about bringing back the Trifecta, I want to see 2 things with the Ugin and Sorin Planeswalker when they bring them. I want to see a reprint of Sorin Grim Nemesis, because it fits lore-wise, and it's an awesome Planeswalker. I want that back in Standard. It's super fun, and I really love that Planeswalker. It'd be cool to have it back. Next, I want Ugin that has X in its converted mana cost, whether that's XX, double X, or if it's just one single X like Ugin's Conjurant. I want them to keep pushing the envelope with Planeswalker designs, and, like what they did with Kicker on the Jace, and just make a really cool lead, a really well-designed Ugin, not too powerful, but it would be cool to have it scale with the game with an X in its converted mana cost, and that'd be interesting. So bring back the Trifecta, specifically Sorin Grim Nemesis, and an Ugin with the X in its mana cost. Okay, that was number 3. Now, number 4... what I want to see What I want to see in Zendikar is the return or the reprinting of the Sword of cycle. So we currently have 7 of them: Sword of Body and Mind, Sword of War and Peace, Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Feast and Famine, Sword of Light and Darkness, Sword of Truth and Justice, and then Sword of Sinew and Steel. I'm so good at this. We have that 7, and either I want to see the other 3 that haven't been put out yet. So I think it's blue-black, white-green, and then there's, what's the other one? Come on. There's always one that I forget. We have Rakdos, and Gruul. So I want to see the Dimir, Selesnya, and Gruul versions of the sword. So either bring those 3, because there's something about the swords which is rather elemental. They have to do with elements, and that's a lot of what Zendikar has to do with, is elements. So it'd be cool to bring those, print those 3. That'd be interesting. Obviously, like, some people think the swords are kind of overpowered, but in a constructed format, especially when we're looking at things like questing beasts and all these ridiculously busted cards, the swords are not that incredible. So either you could reprint the 7 sword cycle, maybe just the original 5 again. You printed them in Double Masters, maybe print them again, and now the prices will be absolutely zero. Or, and they'd also be Chase Mythics. Business advice, Wizards, take that. Or print the other 3 remaining. Either way, that'd be pretty cool to see. I'd like to see the swords. Nahiri focuses a lot on equipment, and I'd like to see Wizards actually make that good, because I don't think I recall a single standard format where equipment were actually good. Now, the 5th thing I want, and this is the thing I want second to landfill, but more than anything else, I really want to see a 4-color Omnath. Specifically, completely and totally only for the purposes of playing Commander with a 4-color Omnath, but I want to see a 4-color Omnath Legendary. Now, if you guys can remember, and I'll put them up on screen here, we had Omnath Locus of Mana, that was the first Omnath, and then we have Omnath Locus of Rage, that's the second Omnath, and then Omnath Locus of the Royal. Now, as you can see, it went from green to green-red to green-red and blue. So each time we see Omnath, we're adding them one more color. So it stands to reason that we're going to see a 4-color and a 5-color Omnath once he absorbs all of the different colors of mana. Something that I think is just a really cool idea, and I love to see it. I love it. I love the Temur Omnath so much, and I think they should do it again and make a 4-color Omnath. Now, to get to specifics, which color are they going to add, white or black? Depending, of course, on the lore of the format, but keeping consistent with what I think it is. If Zendikar has some sort of corruption, maybe Omnath absorbs the black mana in this episode, we'll say, and becomes Temur Dark, or Temur with black. So black, red, blue, and green in his 4 colors. I think that would be pretty awesome. I think that would be pretty cool to see a 4-color Omnath. It'd be awesome for Commander players. I know everyone loves Omnath. It's one of the most iconic legendary creatures of the entire Magic lore. Omnath's really cool. 4-mana Omnath would be great, and also it would help tie in with the whole corruption if Omnath suddenly turned dark, and then, you know, synergize with the landfill mechanic, which I'm now coining. That mechanic belongs to me. I copyright. Wizards, pay me money if you want it. I'm joking, only. If you use it, I'd be greatly honored. That would be super cool to see. That's thing number 5. Which means this list is done. Except it's not. Because this final point, this last Hail Mary attempt, is specifically for Wizards of the Coast to hear. You can hear it too, because maybe you'll agree with me, but this is mostly me speaking to the heavens for the sake of Wizards of the Coast, okay? The 6th thing I want to see, actually the most important thing that I want to see, is for them to focus on the mechanics of the set. Now, if you've seen the video that I think we just posted a couple days ago, a day ago, I don't know when this is coming out, we talked about what is ruining Standard, and a big point in that was that Wizards is not pushing the headliner mechanics of the set far enough where you'd have decks built around them. Now, if we look back at Innistrad and Eldritch Moon, those are the standards that I really enjoyed. You had certain mechanics that were really built around. You had the sacrifice mechanic and synergies from Origins and Zendikar. And then you have Delirium, which is a graveyard-based strategy, and you had, a Flash strategy. But all of these were well supported by the other cards that were there, and they were pushed to the point where they were playable as such, but they were also they were contained. They were self-contained. You weren't playing Grim Flare in your Abzan Sacrifice deck, and you weren't playing Grim Flare, a really great mythic, in your Blink deck, not Blink deck, Flash deck. There you go. And you weren't playing Archangel Avacyn in your Sacrifice or Delirium deck. You had these cards that were really good in certain mechanics. You didn't have Teferi Time Raveler, which is just played in everything that has blue and white. I literally played that deck I played that card in a mono black, Chromatic Lantern, Command the Dreadhorde deck. That's the card that I'm thinking of, where I would just pitch it to some stuff, or maybe be able to cast it when I got Chromatic Lantern. Maybe I'd discard it to something or other, but then I would just reanimate it with Command the Dreadhorde, and I literally didn't have a single mana in my deck that could cast it unless I had Chromatic Lantern out. That's how ridiculously good the card is, right? So what I want Wizards to do is help fix Standard, okay? Remedy Standard by not printing headliner good cards like Fires of Mention, which was a complete non-bow in Throne of Eldraine. It didn't work with the Adamant mechanic, which they had, and didn't work with the draw 2 cards a turn mechanic, because you couldn't play spells in your opponent's turn. So if you can't play your Thrill of Possibility, then how are you going to draw 2 cards and get those triggers on your opponent's turn? It's now half as effective, right? You have one less turn to act on. That card was a literally non-bow with 2 of the 4 main mechanics of that set. That's ridiculous. They should never have printed that card, and it was busted in Standard, had to be banned, right? So if they'll just focus on the mechanics, please and thank you, okay, so that they're really good, and so that people can play equipment decks, warrior decks, low CMC control decks with the new Jace, landfill decks, which is, again, my term, the decks that are based around the mechanics, and they don't just have a bunch of really good cards that are just generally good and don't synergize with anything. Oko doesn't synergize with anything at all. You didn't play him for synergy, you played him because he's the best Planeswalker of all time. And that's a mistake that I think Wizards has to fix. So, Part 6, the thing I want, number 6, literally the greatest gift for all of mankind, okay? Just focus on the mechanics, push them, make them really good, okay? Don't push them to Oko's extremes, because you knew before you printed Oko that card was too good, okay? You knew you should have made it modal. You know why you knew how you should have made it modal? Is because you designed Greater Gargadon, which is the modal version of Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, okay? It's literally the modal version, modal version, except you added, instead of put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, you make a 3/3 beast, which I argue is probably somewhat better. So, you already knew that, you just didn't because you wanted to make it busted. So, why don't you not make them busted, but push them so they're actually playable? Alright, I think that about sums it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, or learned something, or liked something, please leave a like and subscribe, and if you didn't, then don't. But, I'll see you guys next time, and have a good one, guys. Peace out.